Hello YouTube, and here are my predictions for the upcoming 17-18 NHL season. In the 8th position in the Atlantic Division, I have put the Detroit Red Wings, based on the fact that they're an aging group. They have Larkin as their main young guy. I mean, their goaltending is different between Mrazek and Howard, and I think they're due for a big drop-off. In the number 7 position, I have placed the Buffalo Sabres. Now, I think they're due for a slight improvement, because Eichel, with playing a whole year, hopefully will allow them for a lot more points. And I think Riley is due for a good year. And they have Reinhardt, too. But their goaltending situation, it's okay. Lehner's a good goaltender, but, their defense isn't that good behind Ristolainen. And they're playing with a lot of young guys, and that whole Evander Kane situation is going to be tough on them as a team. In the number 6 position, I have the Florida Panthers. Based on the fact that they're losing Yager, I mean, he's an old, but he was a key guy. And, they lost Marchessault to the Vegas Golden Knights, and he was their leading goal scorer. Barkov and Ekblad, I think, are due for rises, but who knows how long more Bobby Lou can stay at a serviceable level, and for them, I think they're due for another down year. In the 5th position in the Atlantic Division, I think the Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins, another aging team. Bergeron, Marchand, have 2 aging stars along with Backus. They do have young stars like Pasternak and McAvoy, but I don't think that they're going to be able to carry this team. I just think that they're due for a slight drop. I think they're going to be close, but I don't think they're going to be there. In the number 4 position in the Atlantic, I have the Montreal Canadiens. So, over the summer, there was a lot of speculation with Montreal. They were going to try to get a center, and they were shopping Galchenyuk, and nothing ended up happening. They ended up trading for Drouin, of course, and giving up Sergachev, which I think it will be a good trade for them as long as Drouin doesn't melt under the pressure of the French-Canadian playing in Montreal. But I think they're going to miss the playoffs at one point. They only have that top center behind them. They don't really have much else. I mean, Price should keep them in it. And, they do have Weber back there on defense. But aside from him, they lost Markov. And he was a staple in that blue line for years. And they don't have Emelin anymore, and he was a staple there back to missing 2 Russians. Pacioretty, I think, is a good regular season player. He's not a superstar. I think he's just a great player. So I think they're just going to miss out slightly. In the number 3 position in the Atlantic Division, I have placed the Ottawa Senators. I think Ottawa is going to carry that conference finals trip and be able to get into the playoffs. They have a lot of young people I think could do better on their team. Turris, Hoffman. I think Carlson still has room to grow. I think Brassard's going to definitely ease in his Ottawa a little more than he did last year. I think that Anderson will probably have a good year again this year, but after putting all that cancer with his wife behind him. And I think Ottawa is going to be in the 3rd position in the Atlantic Division. In the number 2 position in the Atlantic Division, I've placed the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now everyone knows about their young guns, Marner, Matthews, Nylander, Kapanen, but I think Morgan Riley's due for a big improvement in production. They have Gardner back there. Anderson's only getting into his prime. So I think that the young guns from Toronto, I think Matthews might hop into a little bit of a sophomore slump because he had a lot of attention, especially in America, because he's an American-born boy from Arizona. But I think the Maple Leafs will be able to continue their success into the next season. And then leading and winning the Atlantic Division, I predict the Tampa Bay Lightning. Last year, no one knows it really happened with the Lightning. They definitely had a bad start, and probably because Stamkos got hurt. But I think they definitely still should have been a playoff team. But they're pretty good. Vasilevsky's serviceable. Hedman is their top defenseman. They got pretty good depth behind him. Signing Girardi, I think, only helps that. Even though he's getting older. They got that triplets: Kucherov, Palat, Johnson, Stamkos. They're just loaded up on the forwards. And those are just naming a few. So I believe that they will win the division. Moving on to the Metro. I think the Islanders are going to finish last. Their goalie situation's iffy. Grice probably will be the starter, but who knows if Halak can bounce back. Their defense, they have Letty and Boychuk, but they're getting up there in age. Forwards, Ladd really had a poor season last year, and I don't see it getting much better for him. A lot of their depth forwards were, I think, are average, if not below average. And the whole John Tavares situation, I think, is going to drag on their season. And I ultimately think he will leave, or if not getting traded first, I'm choosing the last. In seventh position, I predict the New Jersey Devils will finish there, based on the fact that they're pretty young. And last year, I didn't see much improvement besides Heischer. Of course, they got Johansson, and he should help. But aside from that, their defense is pretty weak. I think Andy Green's their best one back there. So that's saying something. Schneider should win him games, but, if they keep on burdening him like they did last year, no goaltender in the world is going to be able to lead them to the playoffs. But I think we should see a little bit of improvement, about 10 points maybe, but at most. But I think they'll finish seventh. In number six position, I predict the Philadelphia Flyers will finish there. Based on the fact that they added practically Nolan Patrick was their only main addition of the offseason. That was noteworthy enough for me to remember. So that's saying that they really didn't add much. They locked up Ghost for long term, and I think he kind of isn't really that good. Provorov is definitely due for a great career, and I think he's going to do a lot of good this year. They still have Drew, Warcheck, and Simmons up there on the top of their forward core. But Elliott in goal is very worrisome to me for Flyers fans, because looking at him in the playoffs last year, they don't got no other options. So I don't know if last year he came able to carry Calgary, but he's only getting older, and I don't know, my guys. So number five, I would predict the Washington Capitals. They lost depth, and everyone knows it. They lost Johansson, they lost Alzner. They lost other guys that I can just not remember at this point, but they lost depth, and that's well documented. That they signed Orlov, Kuznetsov, and Oshie for long-term deals, but those deals are very high-risk deals, and if they don't pan out, this team's doomed for the future. But for this season, they still got Backstrom, they still have Carlson, they still have Vezina Trophy winning Holtby, they still have a great top, and they still have enough depth where they should squeak into the playoffs. In the number four position, I predict the Carolina Hurricanes. So, the Hurricanes are a team up on the rise. They have a bunch of young guns. Aho, Hannafin, Skinner. I mean, we all saw the way the Hurricanes played last year, and that's why I'm predicting them to finish fourth in the Metro. They have the young guns, Aho, Hannafin, they got Slavin, they added Justin Williams, Ram Dreamsdyke, and Darling. So I believe the Hurricanes are due for a good season, and it'll get them in the playoffs in the fourth position in the Metro. And number three in the Metro, I predict the New York Rangers will finish there. They added defensive depth, Shattenkirk. They shed Girardi. They got rid of that contract, and they added to their overall defensive depth, which was a real must for the team. They lost center depth by the Stephon trade, but I think they're going to be good enough and give Henrik a chance to not get pressured every night, and I think he's going to do for a bounce-back season. And, they got a young forward core, and it's still deep, even with the Stephon trade, so I predict them to finish third. The number two position, coming in at number two in the Metro, I predicted the Columbus Blue Jackets. They have a lot of center depth, and they had a really good season last year. Dubinsky, Wenberg, and Jenner, they're three big centers and three good second-line centers. They got three of them. So then you got scorers and Foligno and Atkinson. You got good D depth and Seth Jones-Verinsky, and you got Brovsky. So I think they're due for a good season again. And finishing first in the Metro, I predict the Pittsburgh Penguins, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. I think they're due for another good year. Malkin and Crosby, great dynamic duo there. And they got all those other pieces around them. Rust, Hagelin, Kessel. On the defense, you got Letang and Mata. They lost Daly, and they lost both Bonino, lost Cullen, but they got Matt Murray still, and they still got a lot of depth. Sheary, just so many guys down there. Depth, so I predict them number one in the Metro. Finishing last in the Pacific Division, I predict the Vegas Golden Knights. They're an expansion team. and I cannot see much boding well for them this year as an expansion franchise in the National Hockey League. They are unfortunately, in a precarious situation of getting the expansion draft. They have some young pieces in the draft. They've Theodore. The best player is probably Marchessault, in my opinion. But I don't see them having a good season. In the 7th position in the Pacific Division, I predict the Vancouver Canucks. No one's really sure what the Canucks are doing. They signed Gagne and Delzato, but they're other than that, the City Twins are aging. Their goaltender situation is what it is at this point. Bo Horvat is the centerpiece of their franchise, and he's still very young. Their picks really haven't worked out recently, so and I can't see the situation getting much better up there. So I predict them number 7. In the number 6 position, I predict the Los Angeles Kings. And might be a little bit interesting to some people. I predict the Kings are going to be, this is my bold prediction, I predict the Kings are going to have a down season, and, everything's going to go wrong for them. Their 2 top centers, Kopitar and Carter, are doing the best in the league, but they still got that Brown contract, and they still have that Gabrick contract. And who knows how Doughty's going to perform, and Quick has been injured the past couple of years, and I just predict they're going to have a bad season. In the number 5 position in the Pacific Division, I predict the Arizona Coyotes. That Stefan trade bolstered their center. They got Strome coming up. A lot of their young guys expect improvements. I expect Duclair to have a bounce back season. Domi to be better. Dvorak, I expect to be better. And, their defense, headed by Oliver Ekman-Larsson, should be good enough. With Goligoski, too. And, they lost Mike Smith, but I think Ron Tuck should step in and do an admirable job as starting goaltender there. So, I predict them 5th. In the number 4 position, I predict the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, coming off the Stanley Cup run in 2016, had a low down year, and they lost Marlowe and Thornton's getting up there, but they still have young pieces. Couture, they still have Jones in net, and they still have Brent Burns back on that D-line, So, I predict them to finish 4th. In the 3rd position, I predict Anaheim. So, Anaheim has been a staple in the top 2 in this division for years at this point. But this year, I'm predicting them to finish 3rd, just because Perry and Getzlaff, they're not getting any younger. They really lost the ad pieces. Kessler still should have a couple more years left before his inevitable decline. Raquel and Silverberg are young pieces, but I predict them to just get edged a little bit. Gibson's still good in goal. Lost Theodore. Stoner's not that big a loss, but just get edged. In the 2 position, I predict the Calgary Flames. So people might disagree with me here. Calgary, how good is Mike Smith going to be there? But I think their young pieces are going to get good. I predict Sam Bennett will have his somewhat breakout season and will not look like a bust this year. Monahan, Goudreau are 2 really good young players that can produce points at the NHL level. And they lost to the Ducks in 4, but I think they're a better team than they showed they were. Hamilton, Brody back there leading that defensive core. They got depth center with Backlund, so they should be better than what they showed us. They could be, and I think they're a 100-point team this year. And finishing 1st in the Pacific Division and 1st overall in the National Hockey League, I predict the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers, Draisaitl, McDavid, Lucic, Larson back on the back end, Talbot in goal. This team is primed for a good regular season. I'm not sure about the postseason yet, but I know they're primed for a good regular season run. They've got good depth. They got the best player in the league right now, and he's young. Coming off new contracts, both their stars. So I predict that this team will go out and win the Pacific Division as long as the President's Trophy. Going on to the Central Division, the Colorado Avalanche, I predict, will finish 7th and last in the division. They're not going to do as bad as they were last year, first off. I'm going to say that right from the beginning. The 48 points is near unreachable bad. I don't even think the Vegas are going to be that bad. So I predict they'll finish below 65 points, but they have the whole Duchesne situation. I do not believe he will last on the team before opening night. The Landeskog and McKinnon they're too good players to lead this team back, but behind them, Varlamov is, what is he in goal at this point? No one knows. Their defensive depth is terrible forward depth, non-existent. The signing of Kerfoot really shouldn't change that. So Colorado is really, really just a bad team. In the number 6 position, I predict the Winnipeg Jets. So the Jets are an interesting team. They have young pieces. They signed Kulikov to that huge contract that's probably going to be laughed at by every team in the league. But they have young pieces like Scheifele. Wheeler's still kind of young, but he's a good player. And, of course, Patrick Laine. No one knows how Hellebuyck's going to turn out in goal. He was hyped, but now he's not really as hyped anymore. But Laine should put up 35, 40 goals, I think. I don't think he's going to get sophomore slump. But this team just really isn't good enough. Not enough depth. Not enough blue line behind Bufflin. And I picked them to finish 6th. In the 5th position, I predict the St. Louis Blues. Now, the Blues lost a lot in terms of trades over the past couple of years. Oshie, Shattenkirk, and those are Backus and free agency. Those are big players for their team, but they replaced them well. They got Periaco, Petriangelo. Allen's played terrific in goal after they traded Elliott. They got Sabotka coming back from the KHL, but I don't know about this team. I don't think there's enough for this team to make the playoffs again. I think they're going to have a big dip off, especially since I predict one of the teams are going to have a rise. Finishing in the number 4 position, speaking of that rise, I predict the Dallas Stars. Adding Bishop in goal, I think, was huge for them this offseason. Goalie's been a huge question mark for them, and now with Bishop, I think that solves that. And with Ben Radulov and Sagan as a top line, that is amazing. They still have Klingberg back there on the D line. Depth on the blue line is enough where Bishop should be able to steal games, and their forward group is pretty good. So I think they're due for a good season. Coming in the 3rd position, Central Division, I predict the Chicago Blackhawks. With Taves and Kane, you guys basically know that they're guaranteed for 100 points at this season, but they're aging. They both aren't getting any younger. They got brought on Sharp. He ain't getting any younger. Saad probably worse than Panarin when it comes to regular season. I don't know about playoffs. Seabrook and Keith ain't getting any younger. And their depth forwards, they lost a lot of depth. Darling, Van Riemsdyk, Kruger. So I think that'll affect them. But the mantra in Chicago is just replace them. They can get it replacing guys. So I think they're going to do for a 3rd place finish in the Central. Coming in number 2 in the Central, I predict the Minnesota Wild. That young D-core is just too enticing to not step up to the plate this year. And I think that core is going to lead them to a solid regular season. Suter, Scandella, Dumba, just to name a few, are very good young defensemen except for Suter. And I think Parisi should have a bounce back year somewhat. And I think their offense, Coyle, should have a good year. And we can't forget about Dubnyk. Dubnyk has been playing really well since joining that team, and I don't see anything changing for him. I think he's going to have another good season there, and I think Minnesota's going to have a really good regular season and finish 2nd in the division. And finishing 1st in the division, I predict and coming in 1st, I predict the Nashville Predators in the Central Division. They got one of the best defenses in the National Hockey League, and they have those guys, the Europeans on the forward, plus Johansson centering them all. But, that team is good. That team is solid. And coming off the Stanley Cup, they might get a hangover. I'm pretty sure that they're due for an early exit in the playoffs, but they're to have a good regular season. They're going to come off a high, and they believe they were robbed in that cup final. And I think that's a lot of motivation for a team in the regular season. So I predict them to win the Central Division with 108 points. Speaking of points, I will now be displaying my point predictions for each one of the teams in each division. Disclaimer, I really do not know if the points add up to a real NHL schedule, but these are just my estimates of where teams should finish relative to each other. And I believe that a lot of these teams should be close to these points. The middle is where it gets a little weary. The top and bottom, I'm pretty sure about. The middle is a little bit weary because of schedules and amount of games played, and I really didn't feel like doing that math. So take it easy on me. But these are the point predictions I have for each division. And thanks for watching.